In the rolling hills of suburban Virginia, where the Shenandoah Valley meets the encroaching sprawl of modern development, lived Eleanor Harper, a 68-year-old retired civil rights attorney. Eleanor was a woman of quiet strength, her silver-streaked hair often pulled back in a neat bun, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses that had witnessed decades of battles in courtrooms and beyond. Born in the shadow of the civil rights movement, Eleanor had grown up hearing stories from her grandmother, a former sharecropper who had scraped together enough to buy 45 acres of fertile land. In the 1940s, that land wasn't just soil and streams. It was a testament to resilience, a piece of earth that had been nurtured through segregation, economic hardships, and the relentless push of urbanization. Eleanor's grandmother, Matilda, had always said, "Child, this land is our freedom. They can take your job, your vote, even your dignity if you're not careful. But land roots you. It gives you a place to stand when the world tries to knock you down." Matilda had passed the property to Eleanor's mother, who in turn left it to Eleanor upon her passing 15 years ago. Eleanor, childless and widowed young after losing her husband in a car accident, had devoted her life to protecting that inheritance. She saw it as more than an asset, it was a sanctuary, a living archive of Black excellence and perseverance in a country that often erased such histories. The land sat on the outskirts of Fairfax County, a patchwork of meadows, old-growth oaks, and a winding creek that fed into the Potomac River. To outsiders, it might have looked overgrown and forgotten, dotted with wildflowers in spring and golden leaves in fall. But Eleanor knew every inch, the spot where her grandmother planted the first apple tree, the hidden spring where family picnics were held, the boundary markers etched with initials from generations past. She walked it weekly, rain or shine, in sturdy boots and a wide-brimmed hat, noting any changes of fallen branch, a new animal trail, or signs of erosion. Vigilance is the price of legacy, she often muttered to herself, echoing her grandmother's words. Eleanor's career as an attorney had honed her into a master of foresight. She had represented underserved communities in housing discrimination cases, fought eminent domain grabs that targeted minority-owned properties, and even won a landmark case preserving historical Black cemeteries from development. Retirement hadn't dulled her edge. If anything, it sharpened it. She volunteered at local legal aid clinics, teaching young Black lawyers the art of strategic patience. Don't react, anticipate, she'd advise. And she applied that to her own life meticulously. Twice a year, Eleanor drove to the county clerk's office in Fairfax, armed with a thermos of black coffee and a leather-bound folder bursting with documents. The original deed from 1947, tax receipts dating back decades, surveys from the 1970s, and even affidavits from elderly relatives affirming the chain of ownership. The clerks knew her well. "Ms. Harper, you're like clockwork," one young woman named Lisa would say with a smile. Eleanor would nod, scanning microfilm records for any anomalies. She had once caught a minor clerical error, a misspelled surname, and had it corrected before. It could snowball into a dispute, but Eleanor's preparations went deeper. 5 years earlier, sensing the tide of development sweeping through Virginia strip malls sprouting like weeds, subdivisions gobbling up farmland, she consulted her old colleague, Marcus Langston, a property law expert. Over tea in her cozy kitchen overlooking the land through bay windows, they pored over maps. "Eleanor, this parcel is prime. Developers are eyeing everything east of the Blue Ridge. We need to fortify it." Together, they filed for historical landmark status, citing the land's role in Underground Railroad lore. Rumors persisted that Matilda's forebears had sheltered escaped slaves in hidden cabins there. Though evidence was anecdotal, Eleanor commissioned an archaeological survey that uncovered artifacts, old iron tools, pottery shards, and a weathered journal entry from 1852 mentioning safe passage through the oaks. The county granted partial protection, designating 20 acres as a potential heritage site, which imposed restrictions on development without environmental and cultural impact assessments. Eleanor didn't stop there. She established a family trust, naming a non-profit she founded, Harper Heritage Foundation, as beneficiary. The foundation aimed to turn the land into an educational center. One day, teaching Black history and sustainable farming to inner-city youth. It's not just about holding on, she told Marcus, it's about building forward. He admired her vision, calling it a fortress wrapped in purpose. Life for Elena was rhythmic and fulfilling. Mornings began with yoga on her porch, afternoons with gardening or reading legal journals, evenings with calls to her niece, Jasmine, who lived in Atlanta and dreamed of one day inheriting the land. Jasmine, a budding environmental scientist, often visited, helping Elena plant native species to attract pollinators. "Auntie, this place is magic," Jasmine would say as they watched fireflies dance at twilight. Elena would smile, but her mind was always scanning the horizon for threats. That horizon darkened one crisp autumn morning in 2024. Elena, driving back from a farmer's market with baskets of apples, took her usual detour along the back roads bordering her property. What she saw made her grip the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. Orange construction fencing snaking across her meadows, excavators rumbling like beasts, and workers in hard hats shouting orders. Dust clouds billowed as earth was upturned, revealing the raw scars of what looked like foundation trenches. At first, Elena thought it was a mistake, perhaps a neighboring plot being cleared for a park or road expansion. But as she parked and approached on foot, her heart pounded. A sign hammered into the ground read, "Coming soon, Evergreen Estates, 96 luxury homes." By Fairfax Horizons Hoa, luxury homes, on her land. She flagged down a foreman, a burly man named Joe, wiping sweat from his brow. "Excuse me, sir, what's happening here?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside. Joe glanced at his clipboard. "New subdivision, ma'am. Gonna be top-notch gated community. Pools. The works. HOAS got big plans." Elena's mind raced. "But this is private property. Who authorized this?" Joe shrugged. "Dunno the details. We just follow the permits. Talk to the office if there's an issue." As he walked away, Elena stood there, the wind whipping her scarf. Watching as more machinery arrived, she pulled out her phone and snapped photos, dozens of them documenting every angle, every vehicle license plate, every stake in the ground. Driving home, Elena's thoughts swirled. How could this happen? She knew the answer: greed and oversight. Developers often preyed on abandoned land, especially in areas with outdated records. But her records were impeccable. She called Marcus immediately. "They're building on my land," she said, her tone laced with controlled fury. Marcus whistled. "Send me the photos. We'll hit them hard." That evening, Elena spread her documents across the dining table, a ritual she'd performed before many legal wars. This wasn't just an invasion, it was a desecration of her ancestors' sweat. As weeks turned to months, the construction accelerated. Frames rose like skeletons, roofs were shingled, and sold signs dotted the landscape. Families began touring, envisioning barbecues and birthday parties. The Fairfax Horizons Hoa, led by the ambitious Victor Kane, a real estate mogul in his 50s with a penchant for power suits and press conferences, touted the project as the future of Fairfax living. In interviews, Victor boasted, "We're transforming unused wilderness into vibrant communities." This is progress, unbeknownst to Victor and his board. Elena wasn't panicking, she was plotting. Her trap, woven from years of legal safeguards and visionary planning, was about to snap shut. The Hoa thought they'd claimed uncharted territory, but they'd wandered into the domain of a woman who had turned protection into an art form. Elena's land wasn't dormant, it was alive with purpose, and the invaders were about to learn that the quietest guardians are often the fiercest. While the Hoa celebrated groundbreaking ceremonies with champagne toasts, Elena consulted experts. She reached out to environmentalists, confirming the creek's status as a protected waterway under Federal Clean Water Act, something the Hoa had overlooked in their rush. Artifacts from the survey could trigger historical preservation laws, halting construction, and the trust. It positioned her not as a lone owner, but as steward of a community asset, amplifying her claim. Elena's niece Jasmine flew in, bringing fresh energy. "We're not losing this, Auntie. This land is our story." Together, they walked the boundaries. At dawn, Jasmine taking soil samples, Elena noting encroachments. "They see dirt," Elena said. "We see roots." Inspirational tales from her grandmother fueled her, Matilda had once fended off a white landowner's claim in the 1950s by producing hidden deeds, turning the tables in a segregated courtroom. By winter, 30 homes stood complete, lights twinkling in windows as new residents settled in. Children played in yards that once bloomed with wildflowers Elena had planted. But Elena didn't despair, she inspired. At a local Black History event, she shared snippets of her fight anonymously, motivating others to check their own titles. Ownership isn't given, it's guarded, she said to applause. The HOA's blindness was their undoing. Victor Kane, in board meetings, dismissed whispers of ownership disputes as minor glitches. A junior associate had flagged the Harper name in records, but Victor quashed it. Build first, negotiate later. Momentum wins. Little did he know, Elena's momentum was subterranean, building like pressure in the earth. As spring approached, Elena filed her first injunction quietly, attaching evidence that could bury the project. The trap was set, not just legal reclamation, but a twist that would force the HOA to fund her foundation's dreams. They thought they'd built homes. They'd actually laid the foundation for something greater, a center for empowerment, born from adversity. Elena's story was one of inspiration in a world that takes. The prepared, reclaim, and uplift. Victor Kane, the charismatic president of Fairfax Horizons HOA, was a man who thrived on conquest. In his mid-50s, with a silver tongue and a portfolio of successful developments, Victor viewed land as a canvas for his ambitions. Evergreen Estates was his masterpiece, 96 homes designed with modern flare-open concept kitchens, solar panels, community gardens, all wrapped in the promise of exclusivity. This isn't housing, he'd proclaim at investor meetings, it's elevation. Backed by a board of like-minded entrepreneurs, Victor had fast-tracked the project, securing loans from eager banks and permits from overworked county officials. The land had appeared perfect on satellite maps, vast, undeveloped, bordering growing suburbs. A cursory title search revealed ambiguities, old plats listing it as unassigned. Due to a 1960s clerical merge, Victor's team assumed it was fair game, perhaps forfeited in some forgotten tax sale. No one's claimed it in years, his lawyer, Brenda Cole, advised. Adverse possession could seal it if needed. Victor nodded, pushing forward. Construction began in earnest, crews working overtime to meet deadlines. As homes sold rapidly, young professionals snapping up properties for their proximity to DC commutes. The HOA buzzed with excitement. Board meetings turned into victory laps, with Victor toasting, "We're not just building, we're legacy making." Families moved in, hosting housewarmings, forming playgroups. The community pool sparkled, tennis courts echoed with laughter. To Victor, it was validation, his vision manifest. But shadows lurked. Whispers among contractors about that old lady who drives by taking pictures reached the board. Victor laughed it off. Probably a nosy neighbor. Handle it with a fence. He didn't know Elena Harper was no mere spectator. In her home, a mile away, Elena and Marcus Langston strategized like generals. They violated wetlands protections. Marcus said, reviewing EPA guidelines. The creek on her land qualified as a water of the United States, requiring permits the HOA hadn't obtained. Elena expanded her arsenal. She contacted the Virginia Historical Society, presenting artifacts that suggested Underground Railroad ties. Historians were intrigued, recommending a full excavation which would grind construction to a halt. Jasmine, her niece, analyzed soil and water samples, confirming endangered species habitats, rare orchids, and migratory birds. This could invoke the Endangered Species Act, Jasmine exclaimed. Elena smiled. Layers upon layers, that's how we win. Motivation fueled Elena's days. She drew from her career highs, defending a black family against eviction in the 1980s, turning their home into a community hub. Adversity births opportunity, she'd say. Now, she envisioned transforming the debacle into triumph, using any settlement to fund the Harper Heritage Center, offering scholarships, workshops, and farms for urban youth. They invade, we innovate, she told Jasmine. While Elena built her case, the HOA expanded. Victor announced Phase 2, more homes, a clubhouse, Press releases praised sustainable growth, but cracks appeared. A worker found an old boundary stone, etched with Harper 1947. Victor ordered it removed. An environmental inspector, tipped off anonymously by Elena, visited, noting irregularities. Victor schmoozed, delaying scrutiny. Elena's preparation was inspirational. She hosted virtual sessions for Black landowners nationwide, sharing tips on title insurance and trusts. Protect your roots, or others will uproot you. Participants called her a beacon. One woman from Alabama wrote, "Your story gives me hope. To fight for my farm," Elena replied. Hope is action in disguise. By summer 2025, 60 homes were occupied. Residents formed committees, unaware their dream was on borrowed ground. Victor, sensing unease, hired PR firms to spin narratives. Evergreen Estates, where community thrives. But Elena's trap deepened. She quietly partnered with a national environmental NGO. Ready to file amicus briefs, the historical angle gained traction. A local museum expressed interest in exhibits. Victor's ambition blinded him. In a heated board meeting, when Brenda flagged potential claims, he barked, "Settle if it comes. A payout's cheaper than stopping." He underestimated Elena's resolve not for money, but justice and legacy. Her files grew, photos, videos, expert reports. Marcus drafted the lawsuit, including claims for trespass, environmental harm, and cultural desecration. Inspirational moments punctuated Elena's journey. Walking the land's edges at dusk, she'd whisper to her ancestors, "I'm holding the line," Jasmine added, "and building bridges beyond it." The Hoa celebrated barbecues Elena plotted. Revolutions, they thought they'd struck gold. Instead, they'd unearthed a force of nature. The truest brood. Elena's heritage designation included a clause for public access if developed, but only under her foundation's control. If the Hoa lost, they'd fund restoration, and her center, motivation, incarnate. From trap to triumph. The first crack in the HOA's facade appeared in July 2025, when Elena's injunction hit the courts. Filed under seal initially, it burst into public view via a leaked document to local media. Headlines screamed, "HOA builds on disputed land, owner claims heritage violation." Victor Kane stared at his phone in disbelief, coffee spilling unnoticed. Who the hell is Elena Harper? He demanded in an emergency board call. Brenda Cole, scrambling, uncovered Elena's ironclad title. She's got everything: deeds, taxes, even a recent quiet title judgment. Plus, environmental flags we missed. Victor paced his office, overlooking the very homes in question. Offer her a buyout. Make it generous. But Elena, through Marcus, declined. This isn't about sale, it's about restitution. The courtroom became the battlefield. Elena, dressed in a tailored suit, testified with poise. "This land is my family's bloodline. They built on it without permission, desecrating history." Exhibits included artifacts, photos of construction scars, and expert testimonies on ecological damage. The judge, impressed by her preparation, granted a temporary halt, freezing sales and evicting crews. Residents panicked. Town halls erupted. "We bought in good faith," Victor placated. "It's a misunderstanding. We'll resolve it." But doubt seeded. Some families, learning of Elena's story, sympathized. One mother approached Elena after a hearing. "I had no idea. Your fight inspires me to teach my kids about real history." The Hoa countered with motions, claiming adverse possession and good faith error. Victor took the stand. Charm on full. "We aim to build community, not harm." Cross-examination exposed negligence, ignored red flags, rushed permits. Marcus hammered ambition over due diligence. Elena's inspirational aura grew. Media profiles dubbed her the land guardian. Interviews highlighted her career, motivating viewers. In a world of takers, be a keeper. Donations poured into her foundation. Supporters rallied outside court. Jasmine live-streamed updates, turning it into a movement for land rights. Victor's world cracked. Lawsuits from residents mounted. Banks called loans. Board members distanced, whispering resignation. In a low moment, Victor visited Elena's home. Unannounced, "Name your price," he pleaded. Elena, unflinching, replied, "Price, restore my land." Fund my center and learn humility. The twist revealed Elena's trap wasn't mere ownership. Her heritage status invoked federal grants for preservation, but only if developed unlawfully. The HOAS bill triggered penalties, forcing them to pay for and remediation, channeling funds to her nonprofit. Plus, the creek violation brought EPA fines earmarked for community projects. Motivation peaked in Elena's closing argument. This isn't vengeance, it's vision. From their mistake, we'll build education, empowerment. Legacy isn't hoarded, it's shared. The gallery applauded. Victor, defeated, saw his empire wobble as deliberations loomed. Elena walked her land's fringes, inspiring Jasmine. They walked in blind. We'll lead with light. The verdict came in September 2025. The court ruled for Elena. The HOAS claims crumbled under her evidence. Judge Harlan declared, Ms. Harper's vigilance exemplifies stewardship. The defendants acted recklessly. Orders, demolish encroaching structures, pay $15 million in damages funneled to restoration, and the Harper Heritage Foundation uncover legal fees. Victor Kane resigned in disgrace, his reputation shattered. The HOA dissolved amid bankruptcies, residents relocated with compensation. But Elena's trap twisted positively. Instead of full demolition, she negotiated partial preservation. Some homes became staff housing for her center, others eco-friendly. Classrooms. The Harper Heritage Center opened in 2027. 45 acres transformed into a hub of inspiration. Exhibits on Black history, sustainable farms, youth programs. Elena, director, mentored thousands. From invasion to invitation, she sat at the ribbon cutting. Attended by former residents turned allies, Jasmine took over operations, expanding nationally. Elena's story became a book, Roots Unbroken, motivating millions. Traps aren't ends. She wrote, There turns toward greater good. Years later, Elena sat under her grandmother's apple tree, watching children learn. The HOA had walked into her trap, but she turned it into a ladder for all.